Welcome to There She Is, the podcast by Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania. This is a space for celebrating women in sport, the athletes, coaches, administrators, volunteers, and leaders who shape our sporting communities. We talk pathways, visibility, lived experience, and what works for women in sport right here in Tasmania and beyond, because representation matters and every story deserves to be seen.
Hello everyone, it's Philippa here from Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania, and I am very excited to have Karen Wills joining us today, who is the Head of Women's Development and High Performance Manager for the Taroona Football Club. Now, she is one of the true trailblazers for women's football, particularly in the areas of coaching and leadership and development. She's had an incredible career as an athlete and loves the sport and played as long as she could. And it's great to see her taking up these leadership roles here as well. So alongside her coaching and the leadership work she's doing, Karen's also a researcher who will talk a little bit about some of the work she's doing with adolescent girls and dropping out in sport. But we are very excited to have you today because you're a bit of a legend in the Tasmanian sporting space.
Thanks, Philippa. That sounds a bit overwhelming. I hope I can live up to that.
No, Karen she's very humble, but we're so grateful to have you today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in football and what you're doing today?
Sure. So I'm a definite classified football, round ball, tragic. Love the game since I was quite a young child. We used to have to go to bed and have a little sleep so we could get up and watch the highlights of the English football, which used to show late in the evening, men's football, of course. But was very dismayed that I actually wasn't allowed to play. Girls didn't have soccer teams back when I was a child, so I used to watch my brother, but on the odd occasion got to take the field when they were short of players, which were probably the high points of my life back then. But eventually found a team at 15 and just loved it. Thought, people used to say, oh, I didn't know girls played soccer, but I cheekily used to of course they do. But I played constantly and until I had children, really, which forced a stop, which I think for lots of women, that's a big stopping point for sport, and I think lots don't come back. But after that, I had children, and then I came back to playing, and then my children started playing, and then looking around for coaches, and I'm looking at all the dads kind of putting their hands up to coach, and eventually thought, oh, this is fairly confronting because, I don't like being the centre of attention, and I don't like all that chaos, and I like things to be orderly, but I really should do this. So I ended up coaching stints for both my daughters through primary school and high school, still playing in the meantime, and was fortunate enough that I kept playing and was able to play a couple of seasons with both my daughters when they were teenagers, when they were kind of 15, 16, old enough to play senior football. So that was fantastic, and I highly recommend it to anyone who can drag their old body along for long enough. So that was my entry into coaching. Coaching my daughters, did some, at that time, coaching courses were being developed and sort of rolled out at the community level. So did a bunch of courses and it took me a long time to actually enjoy it. Actually, it was a bit of a running joke. I used to leave to go coaching when one of my daughters was a teenager and they were quite a rabble. And my husband used to say as I left the house, have fun. And I'd look back at him and say, I won't. There was that special sort of age where they loved playing, but they also were just silly. So, and that was a bit confronting for me, who kind of loved the game for itself and all the details of it and wanted to help them be better. And they were actually very athletic and a very good team. And they had quite a bit of success, but it was definitely herding cats at training.
I love that. And girls can talk a lot at that age.
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, Tasmania and Hobart being as it is, I played and continued to coach some of these girls as adults, and a few of them have reflected back. They're in their mid-20s now, reflected back at sort of, wow, we were pretty wild, weren't we? Yeah, that's been nice. So when my girls, obviously they sort of started playing in teams that I was playing in, so I had a little bit of a break from coaching while I still played. But then, my body's like, okay, this is probably enough. And so then I sort of started getting involved in coaching the senior women. Yeah, did that for many years and then sort of stepped up my coaching to do the more serious coaching qualifications. So I did a C diploma was the first one. I did my B diploma a couple of years ago, year 22 probably. I think I did that. And that's sort of getting to the pointy end of coaching. And I love that because it's, you're really starting to get into the details and, you know, people who sort of aiming for high level coaching, and some pretty amazing coaches were in that. There was a group of 25, I think there was 3 females. So that was nice.
Wow.
Yeah. But a fantastic bunch of guys, too, very experienced. And, I learned a lot from them as well. And by that point, I suppose a lot of them knew me. I sort of stand out in the coaching ranks in Hobart by being female, probably, because there aren't too many at that level. But yeah, that's been a great journey for me. And it probably took me that far to start to actually really believe I could coach. I don't know,
Wow.
that sounds silly, but you feel like you're making it up a bit as you go along. And I'm fairly self-reflective and at times probably overcritical. So I sort of reflect on every session and think, oh, I'm a terrible coach. That didn't go very well. But I think with time and persistence and just acknowledging that coaching is a messy business and you can go in with the best laid plan, well thought out plan. But if the number of players you get isn't what you'd planned for, or maybe you're coaching an attacking session and you don't have many attackers there that night, or, there's a whole lot of reasons why a session you might feel doesn't go well. But then I've also become comfortable with, at the end of the day, even if you don't think the learning was as good as you want, if the players had a good time and were really involved and engaged, well, it probably was a good session for them. So that's sort of an interesting side of coaching. So yes, and now I've stepped back from coaching. I think years and years of sort of that commitment to 2 trainings and a game. And our season sort of starts in January and runs to September. So it's kind of a long haul commitment, and saying no to lots of social things and trips away and all sorts of, because there's that commitment. And I take that commitment pretty seriously. So I'm not going to say, oh, I can't coach tonight. It's my daughter's birthday. I think in my family, everybody knew birthdays would be celebrated not on a training night, which, I just think if you take on that commitment, I want to take it seriously. Yeah, I'm now sort of more working with Holly Lace Aiden at our club, sort of more in the strategic side, building the programs and looking at how we can, you've always got to reflect on your programs and keep it current and ask yourself, is what we're delivering meeting current needs? Because you want to have offerings for people who are more interested in social sort of sport. But also, how can we best support players who are looking for that high performance elite pathway? And sometimes in community clubs, you get a bit of a mix of both, and that's a bit of a tricky balance. But so
Yeah.
yes, still at it.
This is amazing. There's so much to unpack there, and that we can learn from your experience. So first up, you've obviously been the sole or one of very few women throughout a lot of the space. So what are some really challenges that you've faced, or perhaps even still facing in this space, or an advice that you'd give for other women who might be, in a bit of a minority female space in their sport too?
Yeah, it's actually really confronting. I'm a naturally sort of a fairly reserved sort of character, and I would tend to only put my opinion out if, I don't know, if it was absolutely necessary, particularly in those sort of spaces. And I think for a long time I felt kind of a bit invisible, which sort of suited me, because I guess I was building my knowledge and confidence and working out sort of how I wanted to operate in that domain. But yeah, at times, felt unheard, like some of the older guys there didn't, A, I was female, B, I was a bit older. So, gee, what could I possibly know about football? But that said, there were also, lots of really supportive guys there too. So I think, yeah, it's just navigating that, being confident to speak up, ask questions. When I did the B license, the 2 young women on that course were amazing. One of them was sort of much more extroverted, but she was quite, and she was really happy. She just put herself out there and was, would be happy to say anything, ask anything. And that's great. And you want to encourage that. But for some personalities like
Mm.
mine, I'm never going to do that. So it probably, my journey to becoming a confident coach was probably longer. But I think find the people who hear you, who listen to you and hear you. And, if you are someone who's a bit more reserved and not inclined to put yourself out there, just kind of work out who the people are who can support you, because there are plenty of them out there. But I don't want to say that be confident, speak up, put yourself out there, because I didn't and I probably wouldn't again. It's just, I think you've got to find your space in your journey. But if I could have given myself some advice, it would be to back yourself and believe in yourself a bit more, and don't always immediately jump to why I must be wrong when
Yeah.
there's yeah,
It's interesting because we did speak about this before, and because I've had similar feelings myself, where you go, someone else might speak up more loudly or drown you
yep,
out a bit at times, and so you have that little bit of self doubt. Go, oh, do I know what I'm talking about? And then you come back to it, and you're like,
yeah.
hang on, I know exactly what's going on here.
Exactly. And the other thing with coaching is it is many and varied. So that if you have a team and you had 5 different people, in a virtual reality coaching that same exact team, you could have 5 different playing styles. You could have very different ways of approaching the game, different roles for different players. And I mean, all right, there is at each extreme, wow, that's amazing, and oh, that's terrible. Why would you do that? But there's a whole lot in the middle, a whole lot of kind of coaching that's not wrong. It's just different. And it's just because someone else would do it differently doesn't mean what you're doing
Mm,
is wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's kind
absolutely.
of like a continuum, and it's about working with the players you've got and with your knowledge um, and how you want to coach. And I think that really helped me with coaching, that stop worrying that other people might say, oh, why are they playing that formation? And I think they should play like this. And, that player should be doing that. Well, that's not how I'm coaching them. And that's not what I want to achieve. And for me, kind of really, and this is where the B diploma helped me. I really worked on my playing style, like how I wanted the team to play, you know, how I wanted them to approach the game, and then looking at the players, like, do I have the players to do that? Do they have those skills? What do I need to coach? What do they need to learn to be able to bring that playing style to life? Because there's no point pretending you're going to play like Barcelona if you don't have the players. So I think that, trust yourself, be clear about, if you're coaching girls, what do I want to achieve? Where are the players at now? Do they have the skills and knowledge to do that yet? And then you can kind of break it down into the things we need to work on, trusting yourself. And it took me a while, but constantly reminding myself that, that's okay. I'm doing it like this. Another coach would come in and do it differently. That doesn't make them right and me wrong. It's just a different approach.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
being,
Different.
yeah, totally. And if something's not working, be it a training session or, the game plan didn't quite, it's just about that reflecting on, well, why didn't it work? And then just, okay, let's go back a couple of steps, and not reducing everything to, gosh, I'm a bad coach, which
A
is,
little reframe in the mind.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. Now, I know one thing you're really passionate about is participation. And as a self-confessed technical enthusiast, and coming from a sporting background myself and, loving competition, we're realizing people don't always participate for the same reasons. And, you even spoke about the commitment with January through to September, because it might even be intimidating for some people getting into the sport. What are you starting to notice about different reasons that women and girls are participating in football?
Yeah, definitely. I've sort of noticed this throughout my playing and coaching life, but there's also sort of lots of research coming out which kind of confirms that, large majority of women and girls play for sort of obviously the physical activity, but social reasons and having fun and feeling included and being welcomed. And I guess, at times I probably have been frustrated because people don't take it as seriously as I do and don't really care that that technique is not exactly, or that technique could be improved. And I guess it took me a while internally. I was always very polite about it, but to actually come to terms with it truly, that's fine, that people do play for different reasons. And I think life's become kind of more complicated and busier, and society's just hectic. And I feel like the weekend kind of seasonal competition, well, seasonal, it goes for more than a season, but for football codes being a winter sport, and that now kind of involve 9 or 10 months of the year, that I think the appetite for that is reducing. Girls, it's partly the commitment, but also just the level of competition. I think there is more of an appetite for sort of smaller, even reduced format, but certainly shorter duration, more kind of social sport, so that you can rock up for sort of a 6-week block and play, I don't know, 5, 6, 7-a-side football with your mates. And I think if we can look at offering more of that, we'll keep more people engaged. I mean, the dropout rate for women and girls in sport, well, girls as teenagers, is huge. And I think, if we're not meeting those social reasons for playing, and if they're not feeling that the environment is welcoming and supportive, they're more inclined to just walk away from the game rather than, oh, I'm going to find somewhere else to play. And I think a lot of that, I mean, obviously there are lots of women and girls out there who take their sport very seriously and love their sport and, love the technical side, and they want to reach the highest level that they can reach. But I think there's a vast mass who just would engage in sport if it met more of those sort of social needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, even when you're talking about mothers and juggling coming in at that
Yeah.
point, sometimes that shorter term commitment and social opportunity is great. And I was speaking with Netball recently, and they were also emphasizing similar things. We have a great social space for adults, but not necessarily providing that social environment for the adolescents. There's so many pathway focus. So are you doing anything in particular, or what other ideas have you explored in terms of developing these shorter social programs?
Yeah. We sort of talk about how we can deliver those sort of things. I mean, we do run come and try days a couple of times a year for women, and, we're always astounded by the turnout. You don't have to have played, come along, we'll just mix people up, and we usually get kind of our senior women's teams and our youth girls as part of it. So you're sort of mixing in. There's definitely an appetite for that sort of format where you might play 5-a-side, so it's not as physically demanding. Because I think, 11-a-side football, if you've stopped and had a couple of kids and you come back and your option is all winter 11-a-side full field, it's pretty intimidating. And if you've never played, like, I think we don't really, and this is men and women, but if you've never played a sport, it's very difficult to find somewhere as an adult to go and learn. It's always for people who know how to play. So, yeah, when we've had those come and try days, we've had, mums of kids who play for the club and others. Holly runs the Kick On for Women, which is sort of a Football Australia program that she helped develop, which is specifically for women who have never played. So I think
That's so
they're
cool.
very good. Yeah, I'd quite like to develop or have some offerings for teenage girls, a similar format, so that they can come along and just play in a small format. And, out of that, some of them might decide, oh, I do want to take this a bit more seriously. As always, it's sort of resources that are limiting. I mean, in community clubs, volunteers are stretched pretty thin. I mean, most people have jobs and families. It's not like the club has paid employees to run these programs. So it's, it often comes down to finding the time, but it's also access to venues. I mean, we hire grounds from councils, and all grounds are, oversubscribed and in demand. So you have to sort of be able to find a ground that you can hire. And then, well, where do you pass that cost on to? Because you've
Yeah.
already got people volunteering their time to run it. So, yes, it's a space that I think I would like to see kind of the sporting bodies engaging in a bit more. I know, like, I don't for 1 second think the elite pathway programs should not be funded. Like, I'm very in favour of those pathways, but I think thinking a bit more and devoting some more resources to sort of more social type versions of the game would be really helpful, and I think might keep more in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
I think it's a lot of different sports are seeing this challenge with volunteers and space.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, it's really hard. And, even when you're sort of super committed to it and and we have a couple of people at our club. I always say we work. It sounds like we're paid to do this, but we're always sort of finding time to work on how can we improve our offerings and how can we change this and what grounds can we get. And, it's sort of a community service, but
for
it's
sure.
it's an unfunded community service. I don't know what the answer is, but because you don't want to always sound like we need money, we need money, we need money, but you do, because
Absolutely.
everything costs. And with a lot of these programs, you don't want to charge people to participate because that's a barrier. But if you don't charge them to participate,
How do you cover
how
the
do you
cost of
run
the field?
them?
Yeah.
So yes, we kind of go around in circles with some of these conversations, but there are grants out there, but they're hard to get.
Very
Everyone wants,
competitive.
they're very competitive, and you've got to find the time and have the knowledge to kind of put together. You might have a great idea, but you've got to put that in a sort of novel and compelling way in a grant application, which isn't always easy with people who are busy and doing other things as well. So yes, it's a challenge, but I've really, and probably 5 years ago or more, I might not have had the same opinion, but I do think those more informal sort of sporting options are becoming critical. It's sort of life seems to move in bite-sized chunks now.
It's interesting how that evolves, yeah. And I think a
Yeah,
lot of clubs and sports can start to have this discussion as well,
yeah.
and it's a bit of a trial and error to see sort of what fits in. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Definitely trial and error, I think, is the key. And as I said, when we've run these come and try days, we've kind of gone, oh God, we've got 60 women here. What are we going to do? And but when you launch it and promote it, it's like, oh, well, I guess if we only get 5 people, we can do some skills and stuff with them. But because you have no clue, am I going to get 5 people
right.
or am I going to get 60 or something? And
Mm.
yeah, the first time we did it, we thought, oh wow, okay, there's an appetite for this.
Definitely. There's totally a need for it. And, I think at the end of the day, we all know the health benefits of
Yes.
being physically active and not necessarily a competitive way. So there's a huge need for it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Do you sort of have any advice for other sports at that strategic level, what they can do, on a regular process to move forward with this?
Yeah, I really think it's about engaging with the people sort of on the ground who are involved, the coaches, the leaders, the players, about what they want. Because I think it's certainly different sort of for girls and boys and men and women. And I think there'd be differences from sport to sport as well. I mean, some sports lend themselves more readily, if they've got a smaller field or court or whatever they play on.
Sure.
If you're playing with people of a similar level, the game naturally slows. Whereas for other sports, like most of the football codes, you really need to look at reduced formats, I think, smaller team sizes, smaller fields, because I think everybody's seen like little kids running around on massive fields, but the same with people who haven't played and perhaps don't have the fitness. It just doesn't quite work as well. But I think definitely listening to the people in your club or code or whatever level people are operating at, and finding out, well, why they're dropping out, why people don't want to keep playing. And for the ones who are, yeah, I think it's probably pretty nuanced, but I do think that the culture's first. I mean, you've got to get your culture right. You've got to have a really supportive, welcoming culture. Otherwise, they're not going to stay. But yeah, it's just about having those conversations, and there's no right answer. And, we keep tweaking it, and, oh, that didn't work so well, mate. Not give up. Don't give up. If the first one doesn't work,
Absolutely.
it's just that, why didn't it work? Okay, maybe we could change this. Maybe we could, it's really persistence. Persistence is everything.
And when you're sort of having these conversations and finding out why people aren't participating, are these just sort of personal conversations that you as a coach might be having, or do you send sort of, a survey or email sort of follow-up conversations, or what typically
Yeah,
happens?
lots of stuff. Initially, I suppose over the years of kind of playing and coaching, the dropout rate every year is quite substantial. And a lot of it, so speaking from my experience with Taroona Football Club and in the Women's Super League area, so that's sort of the higher performance end, girls reach maturity while they're still at school. So you get a lot of, 16, 17, 18-year-olds playing at the highest level, and that's in a number of codes. And then, of course, Tassie being a little island, lots of our kids leave the state. So there's a combination of a lot of them going interstate to study, some of them go overseas to travel. So that's one kind of loss. And that's not one, it's concerning when you're running a club and you keep losing players every year, but that in and of itself is not alarming. That's just their course in life. But the other reasons players stop, friends stop playing, I think a big issue for girls, particularly when they hit high school, so primary school, they're going through with all their friends. And then as they get older, there's this natural streaming. There's a range of abilities, and some of the better players want to take it more seriously. And then you've got girls that are just playing socially, who some of them may have the capacity to develop as good players but aren't interested. Some of them just aren't as good. That's just life. And so as they stop playing as a friendship group, you find, I think a lot of the players who are playing because they played with their friends now find themselves having the choice of playing with people they don't know, who could well become their friends if they persisted, but that's a bit more daunting.
For sure.
Might drop out because they're not playing with their friends anymore. So a lot of it is anecdotal, what I've seen, but there's also a growing body of research around, if they don't like the coach, if they don't feel welcomed, if the environment is not supportive, inclusive. Yeah, they're many and varied. I think cost comes in for some, but I think really those social factors and environmental factors seem to be anecdotally important, but the research is backing that up. There's quite a lot of research being done in Australia. In Victoria, there are some researchers there doing lots of work in this space. And the social and environmental are huge.
Mm.
And that's not a money thing. That's an attitude.
Yeah, it sounds like you really need to nurture almost the leader of those friendship groups, because to keep them in, to support their little group of friends that are staying, because
and it's
off.
actually as clubs, it's a real issue because parents want to keep the players together as a team as they go through, and that works to an extent, but then the better players who want to be challenged and want to develop, that doesn't develop them in that environment. But then when you take them out of that, so you have these dilemmas of, you feel like you're always compromising someone. So, and that's where I think if, your players who are seeking high performance, they have to come out and be challenged and go into environments where they will develop. But I think it's how we keep the more social players engaged. And if there's, 5 or 6 left in that team,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
and sometimes
lots of moving parts, right? So you just have to be really aware of it.
and a team, it's really tricky, and it's maybe about having conversations with those players about, and sometimes I think we've got to accept that even though people involved in team sport, so there are so many benefits from a team sport beyond the skills and the game. You learn so many life skills being involved in a team sport. But I think for some people that runs its course for them. And I think as long as they're going off into and replacing their team sport with some other physical activity, it's less concerning. But I guess, yeah, I think perhaps a lot don't.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing. If they can just transfer them, they're still moving in
Yeah,
some way, shape, or form. And as much as we want to retain every single
exactly.
one of them forever.
You can't. Yeah.
So, one of the other amazing things you're doing is some research into adolescents and the dropouts. Can you tell us
Yeah,
a
that
bit
was a
more
nice
about that?
segue. Yes, so with Chrissy Tadros, a physiotherapist here in Hobart, friend of mine, we've been talking for years about this. Chrissy has provided physio support into the WSL team at Taroona when I was coaching. Chrissy and other physios at All Care have been really good at supporting women's teams for a long time. And we just kept, puzzling about why girls stop playing. And we finally talked enough and have honed it down into, so on the back of the research that has already being done and being done around the reasons girls drop out of sport. And like I said previously, there is a lot of support for those social and environmental factors and cost and other things. But one of Chrissy's areas of interest is sort of female health topics that aren't really talked about, like menstrual symptoms and pelvic dysfunction and breast discomfort and pain. No one kind of really talks about those much, but, as a coach, I know, and as a woman, that those factors girls have to deal with, and teenage girls with their changing bodies. I mean, female bodies are complicated. Let's face it. It's not straightforward. And so it's sort of where the first stage of the research is a survey asking to what extent these health topics have influenced a girl's decision not to play. Yeah, I've had players come to me and say, oh, look, I got my period today and I'm not feeling very good. So if I'm not playing very well or if I need to come off. And it's nice that they feel comfortable to say that. Whereas I think for the vast majority, we just, we've all done it. You just suck it up and push through. And it's sort of, I think the conversation needs to be more open. It's a part of life. And I know when Emma Hayes was coaching Chelsea in the Women's Super League in England, she has talked about her training program actually. I mean, they're professional athletes, so they can do this, but their structured training program, they track women's menstruation and the training takes into account for where players are at, which is unbelievable. But yeah, so the research is really, because we don't really know much about it, it's sort of a descriptive study. We're really just asking the questions. So the survey will be targeted at females who have dropped out of like an organised ball sport. So we're talking about, when you're a registered player in an organised competition in a team ball sport. The reason for narrowing that is that if you bring in sort of swimming, gymnastics, there are a lot of other factors that come to play in those sort of sports that are different to team ball sports. So we thought we'll start there. So I think we've targeting sort of girls, females 16 to 21 who played and dropped out in their teenage years. So, and asking them a series of questions. We include some questions around social and psychological, because I mean, that's well documented, but we just want to make sure that, we're seeing a similar sort of thing, but then adding these questions about menstrual symptoms, pelvic dysfunction. So pelvic dysfunction is just, it could be simple things like leakage on exertion, on jumping, running, which I wasn't aware was not uncommon in young females. You tend to associate that with women who've had babies. And yeah, definitely. But, I was talking to a young woman about that and she said, yeah, her and her friends were talking about what they were going to do on the weekend and someone suggested trampolining. And one of them said, oh, no, I can't do that. I might pee myself. And
Yeah.
then this is mid-20s. So I think this is part of the issue, that it's not talked about. And if it turns out that, great if it's not. If everybody says, no, that didn't influence, well, that's good to know. But there are plenty of resources out there, and it's about how can we support clubs and sporting bodies to know, because there are great resources. I mean, the AIS have those great little short modules around coaching women and women in sport. And I think sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to show people where the wheel is. So
yeah, there's incredible resources for all those phases. Yeah, so
yeah, and as
puberty,
someone
menopause, and everything.
definitely. So yes, we're currently working on pulling that research together and sort of distributing that kind of
Amazing.
broadly, through
Yeah.
Tasmanian networks.
I know a lot of sports are very excited about this space here and the results that you're going to see. I've heard a lot of feedback already. Is there anything you already know or assume, like you say, or that would be helpful for coaches and clubs to implement, like making these conversations easier for the women to be able to tell you that they're on their period? What sort of worked for you, or in helping them through these different stages?
What worked was being female, because as soon as you're a female coach, a female player, I don't know how you navigate that. I think it's important where possible that there is female support in and around teams. So, you can't always have a female coach, obviously. Or there are plenty of males, who are open to being educated. And that's where, if we can develop resources for clubs, organisations and coaches sort of to be aware of how to approach these topics. And I think, Chrissy has this Game Bloom workshop, which she's delivered a couple of times at Taroona Football Club, but I know other clubs as well. And that's pitched at teenage girls and their coaches and parents about managing your bodies with sport, because it's a complicated area for girls. So I think if that education can be sort of rolled out to clubs and coaches so that people don't feel so awkward about it, and if it can become, because I think once it's talked about in a forum with the team, becomes less awkward. I'm not going to say it becomes comfortable. I think for lots of people, it will take time and conversations to feel comfortable, but you want it, step one, not make it taboo.
Yeah.
And just become a bit less awkward. So I think education and resources for the people around the team, because I think you can't expect really most young females to just rock up to a coach and start talking about their period or, any of that. Yeah, that's just,
Yeah. Oh, that's really
that's a
interesting.
big step.
And I think, I'm not sure, I think it was you, even just obvious changes like with uniform, like not having white pants can
Oh,
be such a
yeah.
helpful thing.
Yes, I was involved in, this is quite a few years ago, supporting a state team, and with the coaches the strips had come in, and the under 14 girls, main strip, white shorts, white shirt. And I was, are you kidding me? And they're like, what? Like 14-year-old girls. So yes, I think that have certainly been in the media increasingly over the last few years. White shorts, probably not a good idea. Even white shirts. I know at our club, Taruna's always worn white shirts. And a couple of years ago, I think we get our shirts through Nike, but their fabric just was getting thinner and thinner to the point that when it rained, it was like you were wearing,
No.
rice paper tops. And so we took it to our committee that this was really not very good, and acknowledging that these are our club colours. But, the girls, the tops are virtually see-through. And so, we've got a great culture down here, and it was taken on board pretty seriously. And so we, browsed, well, I didn't, but someone at the club browsed the catalogues and found a shirt where the body of the shirt's now black and the sleeves are white. So our colours are black and white. So now, and the whole club has moved to those shirts, and it's also practical. I mean, white shirts are crazy. But yeah, those little things do make a difference. And yeah, being comfortable in what you're playing in is a big issue for lots of girls. And whether that's colour, whether it's sizing, whether it's the cut, I think, giving them a voice to express
Absolutely.
dissatisfaction should be the norm.
Yeah, I love it. Direct feedback. from those in it.
Direct feedback. Yeah, these shirts are too tight, or these shirts are too see-through, or these shorts are too whatever. Yeah.
Were there ever times as a club or a leader when maybe you've seen them just scared to ask these questions because they know they're doing it wrong? Like, how do you confront that? All right, we're not doing this right, and taking on that feedback, because obviously there's great room for improvement there, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to take.
Do you mean feedback from females to the club, or?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but I also think and I've always tried to deliver those messages respectfully. Like, the last thing we want to do, I think, is be combative, be aggressive. But then that's kind of my philosophy on life. I think there are always going to be things that aren't perfect, but I think we need to be respectful, because people aren't, by and large, doing things to be annoying or to be,
No.
to make life difficult. And I think it's just kind of respectfully pointing out that this is not working for these reasons, but also coming up with some solutions, like going away, do your homework, find out, like, whatever you think's not working. Okay, get a few people around you, have a bit of a brainstorm before you go to the powers that be, because you want to be part of the solution, not just a squeaky wheel. It's like,
For
so,
sure.
and it's always good to get together and bounce around some ideas. So then you can kind of front up and say, oh, look, this is not working for our girls because blah, blah, blah. We've come up with a few ideas we'd like to talk about. Maybe you've got some other ideas, because I think no one comes up with the solution first go on their, well, not no one ever, but, I think if you're approaching it sort of respectfully and wanting to work together to find something, and if we don't get it right first time, well, let's keep trying. Let's not just give up. But I'm very big on, there's no need to be combative unless you're on the sports field, ironically. But yes, I think there's always a solution. We can always be better, but it is about kind of working together. And yeah, and I've had some moments where, as decisions have been made that I've thought were not equal, like decisions that have been made, and trying to sort of say this in a way but by going back to the person that made the decision and said, oh, look, I thought it was a bit unfair that, blah, blah, blah. And the reaction is usually, I didn't think of that. Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, people aren't always deliberately, being sexist, being whatever.
Yeah,
Sometimes just it's not in their life experience, so they haven't thought how that might impact, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. So it sounds like they're quite open, really shining light on these different areas.
Yeah, I think don't be afraid. Like, I think people should speak up, but speak up in a way, and maybe this is just me not, but everything doesn't have to be confrontational. Like, just because something's not working, it's not somebody's fault. It's just the way things are. And but yeah, the big thing is, do speak up, but
Yeah.
let's try and have a conversation about it, rather than, yeah,
In the
people
heat of the
always
moment
do
when you're
this.
frustrated. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, go away, take a deep breath. But yes, it can be frustrating. Like, I understand it can be frustrating always to be the kind of second thought. Like,
Yeah.
let's get the men's things right, and then, oh, we have to do something for the women. I mean, that's getting better, but still, I think this is kind of partly why I am still fighting the good fight, because I feel like, as a child and teenager, couldn't play the sport I wanted to play. And I think, until I think everything's good and hunky dory, I can't step away from the wheel.
Love that passion in you. And thank you so much for all the work that you've done in the past and the visibility that you show for other women and girls as to what's possible. What gives you the most hope for the next generation of women coming through sport?
I just think the increasing opportunities for them, more sports. I just think most sports now, like, girls can play any sport, which wasn't always the case. And I think at elite levels, there's sort of that broader acknowledgement that, no longer that, oh, the women aren't as good. Well, they're not as good because they haven't had the resources put into it, and they're not professional and they're still working a day job, whatever. I think the understanding of that, like I certainly in women's football at the top levels where they are fully professional and fully funded, I mean, they are amazing. So it's not that women can't. And I feel really heartened by the way sport is going, that, yeah, women can achieve and women can aspire to roles as a player, as a coach, as an administrator at the highest levels. It's slowly, moving up the ranks. Yeah, I just feel hopeful for girls that they really can live their dreams, which hasn't always been the case.
Yeah. Oh, it's very exciting. The future for women's sport for sure.
Definitely.
And I think especially as a mother of girls too, you're just like, oh, gives that extra incentive to
Yeah,
keep moving
definitely.
forward.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been super insightful, and I know everyone can learn so much from your experience.
It's been a
So we
pleasure.
really
It's a hobby
appreciate
horse
it.
topic.
We could talk all day about this stuff.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much.
If this episode resonated with you, if you believe in visibility, representation, and strong pathways for women in sport, we invite you to join us. Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania is a growing community of state sporting bodies, clubs, women, and allies working together to make sport more inclusive, connected, and supportive across our state. By becoming a WSRT member, you're helping amplify women's voices, stories, and leadership, both on the field and behind the scenes. Head to wsrt.org.au/membership to learn more about becoming a member. Because when we can see women in sport, we can be them.